new regulations and everything being set into place. So you, Robert, moved up into the chair, and I believe the way that the roll call is set up is the way that it's supposed to move from chair to vice chair for the next couple, I guess, years. So, Jeff, you're on deck, and Jerry Tack will be after that, and then Morgan after that.
Okay. Well, let me know when. Do we think that Morgan's not going to be here, so it's the three of us and you?
I'm
right?
going to say so because Morgan usually logs in pretty early, and he can certainly join a little bit later, but it is 5:30, so
All right.
we can start anytime.
Okay. So we're calling to order the Sustainability Commission meeting of May 25th, 2021 at 5:31 p.m. And so as the first item, we are going to pledge allegiance to the flag. Mr. David, will you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Patterson,
Present.
Vice Chair David,
Present.
Commissioner Tack,
Present.
Commissioner Benson, absent.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments.
All right. Next item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the next item is the sustainability plan and annual work plan draft.
Yep. Give me a second and I'll pull that up. All right, can you see the document now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. I think what I'd like to do is kind of go over it generally for this part of the agenda, and then we can go over each section more specifically, especially the work plan elements of it as we go through the agenda, because it's basically the agenda at this point.
Sounds fine to me.
All right. This is the first time I think that I've shared it publicly. I think it's getting to a point where you can at least see how it's going to come together. Just a bit of background, first of all, with some of the things that we've done at the commission. I've added some of the graphics, although the formatting will have to basically come at the end when everything's done. A little bit about the process, and I added more information. I basically am just building out the framework as you guys have, or well, as we've all kind of come up with. So I added more information in the process and in the framework, and as well as a few more graphics. And then for each section, I mean, there's a lot that I still feel like we should talk about filling in or get some suggestions about filling in, especially within targets and objectives and things like that, as well as some of the work plan elements. I brought a lot of the elements in from the other plans, but you may want to go to the India website and, for instance, just pull up the General Plan 2040. At the very end of that plan, it has all of the actions mapped out in a table. You might just want to scroll through and kind of see if anything jumps out at you as something that you want to add or replace in one of the action plans that we have here. Everything is pretty much, I'm trying to keep it more or less in the same order, and each section to about 2 pages. I don't want to add a whole lot of information about what we've done, just basically highlight 1 or 2 things that are really, I think, important. So it just goes objective, targets, mandates. Mandates are filled out in just about every section. And then we have a list of potential projects, and then our annual work plan. And this is where looking at the plans like the 2040 general plan might spur some ideas or changes that you might want to do in these sections. I don't have anything written in the residents can do areas, so if you have anything that you want to add in on that when we talk about this next time, feel free to do that. And then there's at least just 1 page dedicated to what we've done, because there's just a whole lot of sustainability actions that the city has already taken. So I highlight 1 or 2 things there. I mean, I felt like I could write pages on this, but, you know, the plan is the plan. It's not really what we've done. It's really what we're going to do. So I kept that to like I said, a page. And then I followed that throughout. It follows throughout pretty much every section of the document. And again, what residents can do is something that definitely still needs to be filled in. Coming up with specific targets and objectives are a little bit, you know, we could definitely talk about that a little bit more. And then accomplishments. Zero waste is it's huge because of the new regulations around SB 1383 and the older regulations about commercial recycling and multifamily waste diversion for organics. And then our accomplishments, water conservation. I have literally just sent this over to the India Water Authority, and I'm going to be talking with some folks over there and working with them to fill this in. So this is really not yet worked out. Hopefully by next month, working with the IWA, we can get the water resources section done. And then the last part with the sustainable environment, land use, everything that's kind of in there. There was the light pollution policy that, you know, I kind of let fall off the radar. So I kind of like having the agenda and everything in this format, because when I went through it, I actually thought about a few things that I hadn't followed up on, and it really helped me kind of keep on track. So I think that if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to keep the agenda kind of on board with the work plan and the sustainability plan, and with that, kind of make sure that we stay focused on what plan and what activities we've kind of agreed to work on throughout the year.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good organization.
All right, so that's where we are generally. I think it's coming along certainly a lot better than it was before. I think because we're not, a lot of the policies that we're looking at have been through pretty aggressive, public outreach and public comment activities, because we're doing a lot from other plans. But I also felt that it was important to get this up on the website now, and talked about and being able to actually access the plan during our public meetings, so that there is some, I guess, public scrutiny that we're at least allowing. So I'd like to have it, as we talk about this from now on, it will be part of the agenda. People will be able to actually look at it, download it, like you can do with this draft, and make any comments. And as we go through it, that'll be kind of a way of making sure that we've at least put it out there for the public during the initial phase of putting it all together, so that there was time and it wasn't just drafted without anybody else being able to really look at it. So that's all I had for where we are with the plan now. Any questions or comments? That would be great.
So Sarah, you're going to go through each section then, on the agenda. You're going to start with clean energy and.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Anytime you guys are ready to do that, we'll move on with that.
When is the anticipated completion date for the plan?
I was thinking about that, and I think that we should probably, because this is sort of the public comment period as well, I'd like to put it up on the agenda for at least one more month.
Okay.
We need that to get the IWA information, and then possibly a month after that. But I feel like it's coming along enough that we're close and we could share it pretty soon.
Okay.
And be done.
Yeah, I didn't mean to rush things. I just wanted to get an idea of what the big picture is.
Yeah. Most likely when it's ready, it'll be the 21-22 work plan.
Yeah, that was my only thought was, do we want to try to outline a schedule that could be used for years going forward, such as we start, because it is going to be a work plan for a year. So if we could try to get on, I don't know, like what the city fiscal year is, if it ends, or something like that. I think the county fiscal year goes through June 30. I don't know what the city is.
Same thing.
Same with the city.
It is? Okay. So I guess it's kind of too early to do that this year around. But if we could get on like a similar fiscal year schedule and say, okay, the 2021-22 plan comes out here, then we're working on those objectives. And then when do we start looking to update for the next year? That would just be a way, if this is going to be going forward, yearly plan, we can get you a schedule like that, and it'll make things easier to update it.
It's a good idea.
But yeah, as far as anything else on the general overall document, I think it looks great and it's come together nicely, and I agree with merging it with the agenda, so that as we're working on things, we make sure they fall into these target areas, and we're tracking which ones we're making progress on.
Okay, should we go through the sections that are on the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, clean energy. This I took a lot out of the climate action plan. It made sense. So what I have for our work plan this time would be to learn more about digesters and other renewable energy options. There's a lot of options out there, but a lot of it is fairly, I don't know how to say how recognized it is. I'm going to share another screen for, I'd like to share another screen actually. There is a company that has, another company I guess, who's contacted the city about new waste technologies. And, hold on 1 second. And I'm going to talk with these folks. They do, it's a new, the company is called Genus Bioenergy, and I believe that they're another company that has a system of taking waste and basically processing it into fuels and other things like that. But there's a lot of, and I'm going to talk to them, and if they seem legitimate, then I'd like them to come to the Sustainability Commission to talk a little bit about what they do as well. Because I think that learning about these technologies is going to be really important, because there's always something new coming on board. But keeping in mind that it's pretty hard in California to site one of these facilities. The technology is very new, and as far as recycling and waste diversion, a lot of these technologies aren't yet recognized by CalRecycle as recycling, quote. And so we have to make sure that we're still able to get diversion credits. There's a whole host of things that come along with new technologies for waste diversion. But at the same time, there's a lot of options for it as well. And I feel like not looking into it is just something that isn't really something. We should look into it, because, again, you never know when something's going to come along and that's really going to be useful and citable and everything else. I mean, they're not giving up on processes and ideas to actually handle waste rather than landfill it, and it's something that we shouldn't ignore. So I'm hoping that these guys
I agree with that. I just wanted to comment that I agree with that, Sarah. You know, there's obviously a lot of new technology coming online, and so, you know, we should be looking at everything to be aware of all the possibilities, and, you know, we have to use our discretion to determine, you know, what is real and what is questionable. And so I just wanted to support what you just said.
Okay, hopefully these guys will come and be able to talk to the commission a bit as well. That's all I have for the clean energy. If you have any other comments for that?
If you go back to the document real quick.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary under the annual work plan. I don't know if we always want it to be a goal, you know, stay at the forefront of new technologies, but I think that sums it up already, actually, that we just constantly, our work plan is to stay informed on what's out there and what might work in the future.
Great.
And then I think the only thing that residents can do that's easy for us to list is, is rooftop solar probably the only thing that an individual could do for clean energy? Does anyone else know what an individual could do other than talking to a solar energy provider?
That's off the top of my head, I can't think of anything.
Just if you wanted something to fill in there.
Yeah, if you're going to add something there, you might mention that rooftop solar doesn't necessarily have to just take care of the house. It actually can heat the water for the pool.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so I think if you're going to have what residents can do, explore if they're going to. I'm just speaking out in general terms here, but if they're going to explore solar, what you're going to have to do is they're going to have to look at battery storage, and along with that, and solar can do swimming pools, and obviously supply their battery storage. So a lot of battery storage, I think, is going to change dynamically in the next year, cost-wise and installation-wise. So just to sort of be ahead of the curve here a little bit, exactly like Jeff says, let's put something in there to that effect to drive it in that direction.
I think that's good. We might want to add up here too, then to for us kind of to keep to learn about the battery storage or stay on top of that as well.
Yes.
Maybe renewable energy and storage options.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I'll clean it up and.
Yeah, but you get the general.
Yeah. Okay.
On the things that the residents can do, might we say something about consider, an electric vehicle as well?
I think we'll go into this really overlaps with the low greenhouse gas section, the next section, and that's where I have a lot of that.
Okay.
So why don't we move there? Yeah, it overlaps a lot. So even in ours, I had put the EV ARC, which is the solar charger. But yeah, okay. So let's go into, because it overlaps so much, into the low greenhouse gas environment. And here, there's a lot about EV charging. This is one of the parts of the work plan that I think is really important, but that I haven't really gotten started on yet, but identifying the potential EV charging station locations so that we can put more out is one of the more important things that we can do, because we do have funding for that. It's just a matter of figuring out the best places to put them. So that is definitely on our work plan. Hopefully I can get that project off the ground pretty soon. But here also you'll see a little more about having EV charging stations, greening the buildings we have, making them more energy efficient, working with businesses, and trees, of course, the tree program that we talked about earlier. And all of that is being part of the low greenhouse gas environment.
Somewhere in there, how do we interface with the Public Works and the building department, that when they authorize a new warehouse or a remodel or tenant improvements or owner improvements at a warehouse, that we talk about EV charging stations and then in the parking lot? Where does that fit in, if anywhere? The reason I say that is if you look at today's news that Shandi is going to build that development in Palm Desert, part of the conditions were golf cart parking with charging stations and EV charging stations in the public and residential parking areas for the apartments and for the commercial businesses.
Wow. I think
I don't know if it belongs in here or somewhere else, but
no, I think it belongs here. I actually think that I'd rather put it in the annual work plan, because I think that's a good thing to do. You know, right now it's just a conversation.
yeah.
So I'm going to put.
So if you look at the press release for that building development in Palm Desert, you'll see what the guidelines are for charging stations and golf cart parking, electric vehicles. So what they're going to try to do in Palm Desert is tie that with the golf cart path and electric vehicle path to the CV link.
Right. That's a really good one. So, yeah, okay. That's good for now. I think
Yeah,
that's something
that'll trigger your thoughts when you're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we should at least start the conversation on. It might be something that's bigger, that will end up being a kind of, like you said, the schedule will take longer. But that's a great thing to start off with, and I'm just going to put a couple notes here for myself. So that was in Palm Desert, right?
Yes, and so for an example, on the way over to Golf Center Parkway, if you put an EV charging station in front of the new Two Kids Bakery, it's being built over there. That would really get you a lot of exposure, not only for traffic but also on Yelp and all the social media that goes to that store.
Right. Got it. Yeah, I think that's great. And if that isn't something that can be built into that now, that is something that we might be able to add if there's a place.
Well, they haven't poured the
there
asphalt
to
yet,
use.
so.
Okay, that's good. That's definitely a conversation that we should have. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, in my experience, some projects have a mandatory requirement for charging stations and things. I've seen it, and there's probably some law in it somewhere. I'm not sure what it comes from, but I've seen it required of large projects and hospitals and things like that. So
Wow.
they probably already
Okay.
have some situations where it's mandatory. I don't know if it was mandatory in that Chandi project.
I think it was a request from the city.
It was just a request from the city.
I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact, but
I negotiated that agreement, so I didn't get into that level of detail on it, though. I was just doing the overall transaction. But I didn't see that. It must have been in the entitlements.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I'm happy to have that conversation with the community development. All right. All right. Moving down the.
Do you want to add
here.
the what residents can do there, Sarah?
Sure.
That Mr. Patterson mentioned. I think that was good. You know, consider an electric vehicle, and maybe also consider traveling via bike or golf cart for short trips or something like that.
Yeah.
Walking, bike, or golf cart for short trips or something. Or maybe as an alternative to cars or something. I don't know. Whatever you guys think.
Right. I'll wordsmith it. I think I understand what you're getting at, but yeah, that's a great thing. I mean, do I need to drive down, the street? That's something as we build out an infrastructure that, that we actually don't have to,
Yeah.
that we may have a choice, to really start thinking that way as well.
sure, just call Amazon.
All right. And I think maybe weatherization. What? Something they could look into. All right, how's that? Or do you have a few more, or should we move on?
What about replacing appliances? You know, I think there are programs for, incentivizing appliances that use less electricity.
Right.
I don't think IID has anything that does that, but you'll have an appliance program, I think, in I don't know whether the gas company does or not either.
We got new air
Oh,
conditioning.
I think
There
they
was
do,
some kind
yeah.
of
The gas company, I'm sure does.
Yeah, we got
I'm
new
not
air
so sure about
conditioners and we
IID.
got some kind of a subsidy on them.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you what, so we need to write, first of all, we need to, we should add that in somewhere, right?
Yes.
If they have it, and then possibly, and just put consider upgrading upgrading to more efficient. Okay.
Looks good.
All right. Zero waste. This one's this one's a lot. There's a lot in the work plan and a couple of other things that I thought of since Wednesday or so, Friday when I sent it out. Basically, I think that for our objective targets, I mean, I feel like that the mandates are so overwhelming that those are really our targets are really probably what we can best focus on right now. It does open up a whole lot of options to do a lot of things that have broader sustainability impacts. So for one of the things that I thought about was the urban garden project, and this is because 1383 requires the city to purchase compost, and we can use a lot of it in our parks and other facilities, but I'd like to make it available also to just residents. Like, for instance, if a resident, right now we have a compost exchange, so folks come up, they bring in food waste, and they get a small bucket of compost. But what if we could grow that out into something more that, since we have to purchase it anyway, that if residents who want to get compost, they can just go pick it up. As long as the compost facilities can keep records and we can show that we're compliant, the city is basically purchasing it, then they can have all the compost more or less that they want for any kind of urban gardening. But along with that, to really kind of push the idea of urban gardening, we've talked before about having a community garden, which would be great, but it's been pretty difficult finding an area and get that off the ground. And it would be in one place that's it might be hard for everyone to get to, where kind of an urban gardening push would be just garden with what space you have where you are, a lot less centralized. And it could be part of our compliance efforts with 1383. So that's one of the things that I added. Becoming zero waste certified, we talked about that. I think that's a really valid thing that we should get done. Providing the indoor waste receptacles, we're definitely doing that. We're doing that with our facilities, but again, it helps us help businesses and everyone else comply with the new mandates. We're going to need to develop some outreach, and we're going to be holding our sustainability collection events. So I do actually have another. Let's go through this again. Let me share another screenshot with you because there's a couple things that I did want to share. Okay. The golf course. So one of our things was we needed to basically provide some of the infrastructure or the barrels and things. So the golf course, I believe it was Commissioner Tack who said, ask about the bottle filling stations, and they're looking into it. They don't necessarily, I guess they used to have an old drinking fountain. They may replace it. If they do, we'll definitely get them a bottle filling station. But in the meantime, they have these trash cans out here. So they asked about those, and we absolutely bought them. We're replacing them with the nicer ones on the right. So I'm really happy about that. But also, you guys brought up that, you wanted to kind of brand it or make sure it had something on it that had sustainability or something like that. So I wanted to talk to you about these two logos and kind of get your opinion on which one you think would look nicer on the things that we put out. I think branding it is a really good idea. I do want to let you know that the final word on what actually goes on these bins and so forth will come down to the marketing director. But if you have an idea of something, either these two or something else that you would like me to pitch as the actual logo that gets on these, then I'm happy to do that if you have a preference on which one you think would be better.
I like the one on the top.
That was my initial reaction too. I think it just conveys the sustainability idea a little better, more thoroughly. The bottom one is a pretty good looking logo. It just doesn't yell out sustainability as much, I guess, is what my initial reaction was.
No, it looks more like a license plate.
There you go.
All right, well, that's unanimous, and definitely I'll see if she's okay with it, then we'll go ahead and use the top one. And then
Sarah,
last thing for the collection.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
In that urban garden,
Yeah.
a lot of people are promoting these small gardens that you can grow with an elevated garden that's up on posts, so rabbits and critters don't get into it. Where you're growing tomatoes and vegetables and herbs and everything else. What if we had our citizens do a gas survey, electric survey, and a water survey, for usage, which we offer, and then the benefit of having completed those surveys would be we provide one of those to them. Maybe we could get a grant for that. I noticed in another attachment you have somewhere else there was some grant money available for certain things.
Yep.
Just sort of a thought. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be something that people can use on a patio or a small yard. But the advantage of it being is that you don't need a place to start the garden because it's elevated and it's got its own 4 feet, and that's and you put the compost in it and you start a garden.
I don't think you can grow
really
plants in compost directly. It's intended as an amendment or an enhancement to garden soil, and
No, but I mean, it's what we're trying to do is get people to go in that direction.
Yeah. I just don't think you can just put compost in a pot and plant plants in it. You'd need to have something else as well.
Okay. I know of several people who do. I was actually talking to someone today who does some gardening just at her house. So maybe I can ask how or what she uses. I know that she did say that she had to buy compost. There's no way that the soil here can, you have to add it, but maybe just adding this, I'll ask. There's going to be a lot of, I think we'll have to do that anyway, because if we're going to help people do this, we're going to have to answer those questions literally, like how to get started. so
I
that
was,
people don't get
now you're
frustrated.
sort of using it as an incentive to get everybody to be energy efficient, to have all those
Yeah,
energy
but
efficient surveys.
right.
Yeah, you need to mix the compost. I mean, the compost is intended to be used as a covering on the soil. It keeps down the growth of weeds. And then to the extent that it's spaded into the soil, it enhances the quality of the soil, particularly here where our soil is, very poor in nutrients and it doesn't drain well. And so adding the organic matter to the soil here can be beneficial to being able to grow garden plants. As far as growing plants in containers here is concerned, in the wintertime, it works fine. In the summertime, growing plants in containers can be very challenging because they dry up very quickly because of the heat and the lack of humidity. And consequently, you sometimes have to water plants in containers every single day out here. And the plants quite often need to be shaded as well because the roots heat up as a result of the container being in the air, and the roots heat up. You've got a lot of moisture because you have to water continually. They can get damping off and other fungus diseases. So container gardening, I mean, it is challenging out here, and you need to know what you're doing in order to be successful at it.
I think for sure that if we do this, it needs to be simple. So we're going to have to see if we can bring it down to something that like I could do, right? So the project would have to be like something maybe more specific to here's this specific time or plant that grows in this season, like in the colder winter months. Here's some seeds for that. We'll just start there. Mix this with that. We'll definitely have to look into that then. If it's too hard, people are just going to get frustrated with it, obviously. So.
Is it intended to be growing food, or is it growing any kind of plants? Is that what is this focused on?
Either food or specific plants like pollinators, one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, trees are nice because they create shade, which can lower your energy costs if it shades your house. And, there are programs to plant trees. The issue there is that, the trees that do well out here in the desert are more limited than the kind of trees that you can grow in coastal California. We do well with mesquites and palo verdes and Indian rosewood and acacias and things like that. But you also need to select those very carefully due to the extreme heat we have in the summertime out here. You don't see a lot of vegetable gardens in people's yards out here in the desert. I'm sure you've noticed that before. And
Oh, yeah.
It's challenging. I mean, I grow kale and corn and peppers and tomatoes and things in my backyard in containers. And I have to plant everything really early in the wintertime to hopefully get any kind of a crop before the weather gets so hot that it just kills everything. And you may notice that at the field over there, by Madison Produce, they grow strawberries in the wintertime. They do great in the wintertime, but, once the summer comes around, everything gets zapped. And then, you've got the difficult soil here. It's not, at least where I live, doesn't drain well, but I mean, it would be great if we could do something. But I think it has to be thought out very carefully.
Okay. I agree. It's not, yeah, it's complicated, and it would have to be made simple. And if we can't make it simple enough or easy enough, then it's not going to work. People really are just going to get frustrated, and we don't want that.
Well, and then you provide people with these seeds and a bunch of pots, and then they go home and they just, collect dust. It kind of defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it? If you lived in Oregon or someplace like that, you give somebody a pot and some soil and some seed, and they have this beautiful, lush, herb pot in their front yard. But it's a little harder here.
Agreed. Okay, we'll definitely put that on hold and try to kind of think that through a little bit more. And two, let me pull this up next. Here we go. To that grant, these were the eligible type of projects. So there is the grant out there, and it is more focused on, I think for us, the municipal food waste reduction. So kind of stopping food waste at the source. Generate composted material. I mean, we pretty much have to do that since this is a national grant. So in California, that's already mandated. There's really, I don't know what more we can do with that. Increase access of agriculture producers to composted material, and that's happening. Vertec and the other SA Recycling sell a lot of their compost to farmers, and they're going to have plenty of it. They have access. So there's not, because of the mandate, I don't know that there's much here that we're not already doing or that can really help us. Again, it's a national grant. Reducing municipal food waste is pretty much, I think, where I saw the most potential, if we could come up with a project around there. And I believe the grant is from $45,000 to $90,000. There is a match, but we can match that with our recycling funds it matches up because of 1383. Everything that we do that's food waste diversion is basically toward compliance.
So I had one thing that came to mind when reviewing this. Has anyone ever heard of Bokashi? Bokashi? It's sometimes called Bokashi composting. I've just learned about it recently. It's not really composting though. It is fermenting. And what you need is a bucket, and you can put a lot of food scraps in it. And you can add even more than the traditional composting. So you can put meat and dairy products. And then you have to mix in, it's called bran. So it's just some material that then ferments all of your kitchen scraps, and you just keep adding it to this container, and then you add more of this bran on top. And then when you fill your container, you just leave it sealed airtight for a couple of weeks, and it actually ferments everything inside. And then at that point, it's ready to, it can just be mixed with regular composting or just buried in the dirt outside. So I guess the finished project is called like a pre-compost. And it's the only thing I've been able to research that you could do some sort of composting at home, even if you don't have, like a big outdoor area, say you're in a condo or something like that. It's all contained in this little container. I have not tried it myself. It's just a lead that I came up with that seemed like something people might be able to do at home or like at a school project or something.
That
I
sounds
have
interesting.
never heard of it.
Yeah.
It does. I will, if you want me to look into it more, I will.
What about people putting pigs in their backyards and just throwing the scraps to the pigs? That, you know, I am kind of joking, but you know, that's what people in Mexico do. In these rural communities, they have pigs in their backyard, and the pigs eat all the food waste, and then you get ham and bacon.
Right, and I do believe that in the chart for the food waste resources, that the way they would like CalRecycle wants everyone to kind of look at it is what can be used for humans first, and then animal feed, and then, I think there's another step, and then the last really is, or maybe the next step is composting, and then the last would be in a landfill. But they do make that hierarchy, and they do want food to be used in its best way before it's even composted or anything like that.
Well, and we had a group come in and talk to us about how they buy the food waste from the grocery stores and then use it for animal feed. Remember that?
Yep. They make animal feed, right? And they collect food waste, and then they make animal feed with it. Oh, I can't think of the company.
So I think it was in Coachella.
It is in Coachella, yes. Yeah. They came and talked to us because we were trying to figure out what options we had for having food waste collected within our community for our businesses. And I think the issue with their company is our franchise agreement, and that Burtech is the only one that can legally collect food waste in most of the valley, but certainly in Indio. And I believe it is a conflict with that. So they do use it, or they do that, but they can't collect it in a way that would be another option of food waste collection for our businesses. But they are there. They do it.
So do we need it? Do we need it for businesses, or do we need it for residents? On the food waste.
I'm sorry, what?
Can we use it for residents, or do we need to have it for businesses?
For residents as well, both. But residents aren't going to be as difficult because they have a green waste barrel, and that's what we'll use. So it won't be another service.
Yeah.
Or are we just going to throw I'm sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
Are we just going to throw the food waste in the green waste barrel now? Is that the plan?
It's not that simple. Nothing ever is. What's going to happen, what I don't like is that we're going to outreach that you can put your food waste into plastic bags and put the plastic bags in your compost bin. And I don't like that at all, but there's a couple reasons for it. One, the composting process is much different than a regular material processing facility like a MRF. So plastic bags get caught up in the MRF operations and machinery, and it's just bad. It clogs things up. But the composting, because everything is so different, they're able to take the plastic bags out. And we have to have the food waste separated from the green waste because the only option we have here in the valley is composting. And to compost it correctly, you have to have a very specific ratio of food waste to your common green waste. So it has to be separated so it can be mixed together in the right ratio. And if we don't do it in one barrel, all in your green barrel, then we have to send a whole nother truck around and have a whole nother service, and the costs for that are just going to be too much. So right now, the plan will be to ask residents to put food waste in a plastic bag, keep it in your freezer until trash day, throw it in a green bin, and then it'll get composted and the plastic bag removed.
Okay, you could, the other deal, if you look at it, is that they do make a 3 to 5 gallon compost pail, and that is almost like the trash masher. It's got a bag that fits inside of it, and it's got a charcoal filter on it. So, there is a combination of, and those compost bags, they sell those at Target.
I've heard that they are making compostable bags now that are actually compostable.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that that's going to be a good option to at least have that, just because.
It's made by Glad.
Okay, that's the plan, and hopefully it'll be compostable bags that if something does slip through, it's actually a compostable bag, and that's, yeah. There's a lot going on with food waste. It's a lot of mandates, but there's opportunities in it, and I think that that's what we really need to kind of keep in mind. As far as branching out, this is what we have to do, but how can we make this into a program that really helps with food waste and so forth in general? And then I have down the considering the circular economy because of Commissioner Benson's comments about working with electronics. And I believe, Commissioner David, you sent something from the chamber that there was somebody who was doing some of this electronic reprocessing and getting it to people who need it or students who need it. And I have contacted him. Hopefully we'll be able to sit down and talk for a little bit. I'd like to learn a little more about what he does. But in the meantime, since that kind of section seems to be pretty well developed here, even in the Coachella Valley, then we might consider, before we can consider other options in a circular economy is what's here. And maybe map out what we already have and start seeing where the gaps could be filled.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea and a great goal is take advantage of what's already existing rather than building everything on our own.
Yeah. So this section is going to need a little more work, but again, where there's so much mandate, there's also opportunity. The residents can do a lot. We'll definitely have to work on that.
Yeah, definitely. And just so you know, we're still on the PDF, the grant PDF.
Oh, right.
On the shared screen.
Thanks. Yep. I'm moving along here on the plan and let's get back to that. Okay. So yeah, I just moved down from the work plan. Of course, there's the things that we've done, which are pretty substantial. And then the water conservation resources, I'm going to work with IWA to have that more filled out for our next meeting. And then finally, our overall sustainable environment, land use, transportation. And this is where, again, the light pollution policy, I wanted to put that in there because I felt like that kind of fell through the cracks as well. So again, having this work plan is really helpful in that. I also put the bike lanes and the map of the electronic vehicle lanes that have come up a couple times on the list. And again, it's up to you what you want to move into the work plan, what you want to leave, take out, things like that. And I know that I just sent this to you fairly recently, so next, again, as I put in the email, next meeting we can talk a little more about if you have major changes that you want to make. But this is what we have so far. Most of it are things that we've talked about, and there's a couple things from the general plan update that I added.
Yeah, it looks great to me.
Yeah. Is there a way in this plan that we can steer the residents to a website that's got the city charging facilities for EV and the bike and electric vehicle lanes and tie it in with the promotion of the use of the CV link?
All right, let's see. These are just for my notes. Include Indio. We have a couple, so let's put a couple of them in there.
Okay.
And okay,
And then the actual,
this is actually, yeah,
yeah.
got it. Oops.
And we have to
Yeah,
make it,
and I think that's
yeah,
really
we have to make
relevant
it
right
really,
now.
we have to make it really easy to get that map on the website. And the reason I'm suggesting that is that because the city of La Quinta had a map on their website for all their hiking trails, but nobody could get to it. It was
Oh,
there, but
really?
yeah. So they had to change it to make it user friendly. It had to be listed as
All
what
right.
it was. Because it wasn't listed as a guide to hiking trails in the city of La Quinta. It was listed under some other heading that didn't tell you what it really was.
Huh. All right. This is really relevant and a really good idea, and it really does have to be usable and able to find it, but I think that's a great addition to the work plan.
On this category, Sarah, would we necessarily have any mandates that we need to be thinking about filling in?
You know, it's such a broad category that, no, most of the other mandates I've put into the other categories. So there's nothing that I can think of offhand that we have to do for this category.
And so then objectives and targets, we could probably almost pull those from the climate action plan or the general plan update, because it seems like it's just going to be a pretty broad create a sustainable environment and sustainable land use and transportation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do you want us to try to brainstorm something else? It kind of seems like
No.
this is the general category that we probably already have defined.
You know, maybe we can build them off of the work plan. So maybe in this one it would be something like incentivize the alternative transportation routes. Kind of like we did. This might be in another section. It kind of all rolls together, but options, you know, something like that. So like actually, like we talked about before, actually get people to consider and use, or at least how about make it more available. Like that information that we were just talking about on the website would make it more known and available. So maybe the objective is just to not so much to incentivize it, but to outreach it, educate and outreach. You know, some of the things that we're doing.
Good idea.
So maybe we could build that kind of from here. And definitely we could look at the GPU and see what fits into this as well, for sure. The climate action plan, I'm trying to fill in the objectives for the clean energy out of that. But definitely we'll look at some other plans and see if we can't work those in, and then we'll look at what we're doing and see if we can't come up with the reasons why we're doing it and make those the targets or the objectives. Okay. So this is great. This is actually really helpful.
Yeah, I figured since, we didn't have any guests or anything on this meeting while we're all together brainstorming, if we can knock out a little of it. I tend to come up with better ideas when we're all bouncing them off of each other rather than between meetings. Sometimes it's feels like you're trying to pull something out of thin air. I think my fellow commissioners just have great ideas.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely having a discussion makes a lot of progress in a relatively short period of time.
Okay. So I'll take this back, clean it up, refine some more areas, work with IWA, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it at the next meeting. And again, I think it's important that we do so that it keeps in the public, it gives the public opportunity to see and what's going on and provide feedback. Okay.
Okay,
All right, we
so
went through all of that.
where are we now? Sarah, do you want to help me out here?
Yep. We just got into the legislative updates, but actually I don't have anything for that. We're going to
Okay.
put none under the legislative updates for today.
Okay.
And
Commissioner comments? Do we have any commissioner comments?
Only that, Sarah, that's a great job. I think it's a great job. Commend
Yeah.
you for that.
I agree.
Plan is coming along nicely.
Yeah.
it is. And I'm glad you like it, but you know, you guys did the framework and provide the input, and you know, at the end of the day, it's yours. so I'm glad you like it.
It's very nice of you to say that. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's nice.
No,
of you to say
no.
it.
I think it's the other way around. I think it's,
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah. Good job. We keep you on your toes, though, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I always enjoy these meetings. Okay, so staff comments, I'm assuming there are none of those, or maybe there are, I don't know.
No, there's none.
Okay, so the next thing is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn and a second?
I
All in
make a
favor?
motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a good evening.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
All right,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Thanks.